The plane buzzed with the quiet chaos of boarding. Passengers shuffled through the narrow aisle, dragging carry-on and searching for their assigned seats. Amidst them, a woman in her mid-40s found her seat near the window and quietly sat down. She wasn't that old, but time had gently eased its presence around her eyes. Dark circles spoke the sleepless nights, and her skin, once vibrant, now held a pale stillness. Yet there was something striking about her, like a faded painting that was once beautiful, still holding echoes of its former glow. Moments later, a young girl in a rush appeared beside her. She dropped into the seat next to the woman, clearly frustrated and breathless. She looked like a college student, stylish, modern, full of youth and color, like a page drawn from a fashion magazine. The plane was preparing for takeoff, but the girl hadn't yet fastened her seatbelt. "Put on your seatbelt," the woman said softly. Startled, the girl quickly did as she was told. Then she smiled sheepishly. "Gia, sorry, I was in such hurry, I didn't even notice. By the way, I'm Gia. What's your name?" The woman looked at her with a faint smile. There was something sweet and childish about the way she spoke. "Wine, wine," the woman replied. "Gia, where are you from?" she asked, adjusting her messy hair. "Wine, Seoul, and you?" "Gia, Busan," she grinned. "So we are both heading north." The plane began its smooth ascent into the clouds. Jia's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen with slight irritation before answering. "Jia, didn't I told you before I got on the train? Why are you calling again? I already told you it would take a few hours to get there." A boy's voice replied from other end. "I just miss you, that's all." Jia sighed. "Jia, yeah, I get it. Talk later, okay?" She hung up the phone with a small frown and shook her head. Wayne, who had quietly watched her interaction, smiled gently. "Jia, that was my boyfriend," she explained, noticing the look. "He is always like this." Once I softened. "Wine, you reminded me of someone I once loved." "Jia, you had a boyfriend?" She raised her brows. "So, is he your husband now?" Wine looked out a window for a moment. Her voice turned still. "Wine, no, we never got married, but he loved me very much." Her tone was serious now, heavy, almost wistful. There was a distant light in her eyes, as if her mind had wandered back in time. The glow of the setting sun kissed her face through the airplane window, lighting it up in a soft golden warmth. For a moment she looked radiant, like someone who had once been deeply loved. Jia watched her in silence, intrigued. "Jia, will you tell me your love story?" Wine turned to her, smiling faintly. "Wine, it's a long story. You might get bored." "Jia, our flight is long too," she shrugged. "Please, I would love to hear it." Wine chuckled at her persistence, the corner of her lips lifting. "Wine, all right then," she said, folding her hands in her lap. "Listen closely. In the past." The soft glow of morning peeked through the curtains, but one remained tangled in her sheets, lost in deep sleep. Her phone, however, had other plans. It kept ringing again and again, its sound piercing through the silence of the room like an uninvited guest. With an irritated groan, one finally stirred. "Wine, who is calling early and so many times?" she mumbled sleepily, fumbling for her phone. She slid her thumbs across the screen and answered the call, her voice still heavy with sleep. "Wine, hello." From the other end came a familiar, cheerful voice. "Jungkook, wake up, baby. Did you forget we're going out today? Remember?" It was Jungkook. One rubbed her eyes, still half asleep. "Wine, but today is a holiday. Let me sleep a little longer." "Jungkook, you have slept enough," he chuckled. "Now get up. I'm standing right outside your house." That jolted her awake. "Wine, wait, what?" she gasped, bolting upright and rushing toward the balcony. Sure enough, there he was, standing right outside, looking up with a smile and waving at her. Wine's eyes widened in disbelief. "Wine, you could have at least warned me you were actually coming." He grinned. "Jungkook, I did. I just didn't give you time to make an excuse. Now hurry up and come downstairs." With her heart pounding in a mix of excitement and panic, Wine ran to get ready. She threw on a light dress, did some quick makeup, and checked herself in the mirror. It had been a long time since they had gone out together. Between classes, assignments, exams, and endless deadlines, their lives had become a routine of responsibilities, but today they had promised each other something simple: time. I stepped out of the building and saw him waiting. Without a word, she ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. Jungkook laughed and hugged her back tightly, as if he too had been waiting for this moment forever. Then, with a smile, he pulled out a single rose from behind his back and handed it to her. She looked at the rose, then at him, and took it with a wide grin. Jungkook, so he said playfully, "Shall we start our date with breakfast?" "Why, let's go," she replied, her voice filled with joy. She hopped into the car, the rose still in her hand. Jungkook climbed in beside her, his smile never fading, and they headed off toward a quiet little cafe, leaving behind the stress of the week and stepping into a day that was just for them. At the cozy little cafe tucked into the corner of a quiet street, Wine and Jungkook sat across from each other, enjoying breakfast. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee, soft background music, and the quiet buzz of early customers created the perfect ambience. Wine, lost in conversation and laughter, hadn't noticed that a bit of food had clung to the corner of her lips. Jungkook did, though. He stared at her with a soft smirk forming on his lips. Wine cocked his gaze and frowned slightly. "Wine, why are you looking at me like that?" he chuckled. "Jungkook, baby, there is food on your lips." Before she could react, he leaned in slightly, reached out, and gently wiped the corner of her mouth with his finger. Then, with playful ease, he brought the same finger to his lips and licked it clean. Wine froze. Simple, unexpected touch sent a flutter through her chest. Her heartbeat picked up and her eyes stayed locked on his. For a moment, the world around them slowed, and it was just the two of them sitting in a warm bubble of something that felt like magic. Once they were done eating, they left the cafe and stepped into the day. The hours passed like minutes. They explored streets, shared laughter, took selfies under city lights, and wandered through park and quiet alleyways hand in hand. Eventually, they found themselves at an amusement park, the kind filled with childhood and nostalgia and the sound of carefree screams. They went on ride after ride, laughing, screaming, holding hands tightly on the roller coaster as it dipped and soared through the sky. Then one spotted it. A claw machine filled with plush toys, but one doll stood out to her, a soft pastel teddy bear with a tiny red ribbon. "Wine, I want that one," she said, pointing with wide eyes. "Will you win it for me?" Jungkook raised an eyebrow. "Jungkook, what if I can't?" "Wine, oh, you will," she grinned. "I believe in you." And so began the battle between Jungkook and the stubborn claw machine. Attempt after attempt, coin after coin, one stood beside him, cheering him on, her eyes never leaving the toys. Finally, victory. The claw gasped the teddy, lifted it, and dropped it neatly into the prize box. One squealed with joy. She picked up the plushie and threw her arms around him, planting a kiss on his cheek. Cocked in the moment, Jungkook kissed her back, this time on the lips. "Wine, thank you, baby," she whispered. "Love you." "Jungkook, love you too," he replied softly. Their final stop for the evening was the Ferris wheel. As it ascended slowly into the sky, the city unfolded beneath them like a painting. The lights, the buildings, the twinkling stars above. It was breathtaking. A soft, cold breeze began to blow, making one shiver just a little. Jungkook noticed immediately. He unzipped his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders without a word. I turned to look at him. Something about that moment up in the sky, surrounded by silence and stars, felt eternal. Their time slowed. Her eyes lingered on his. He moved closer. She closed her eyes. Their lips met, slow, gentle, warm. The kiss deepened, and Jungkook wrapped his arms tightly around her as the Ferris wheel paused at the top, holding them in the perfect stillness of the night. As the day came to close, Jungkook dropped Wine back to her apartment. The car stopped in front of her building, and neither of them wanted to break the silence. Wine leaned over and kissed him softly on the cheek. "Wine, bye, baby. See you in the class tomorrow," she whispered. "Jungkook, bye, baby," he said with a soft smile. He waited until she entered the building before driving away. Wine stood at the doorway, watching until the car disappeared from view, her heart still full from the perfect. The class had already started. One sat quietly at her desk, her gaze fixed to the teacher. Right beside her sat Jungkook, unusually quiet for once. The lecture had begun, but soon one felt a warm hand slip gently onto hers. She flinched slightly in surprise, but gave no visible reaction. Moments passed. Then she flinched. Jungkook's hand had now moved onto her thigh. Wan turned slightly and whispered through clenched teeth, "Wan, take your hand off. The professor will see." Jungkook didn't answer. He simply gave her a mischievous smile, clearly enjoying her discomfort. Wan bit her lips in frustration and sat in silence, fuming. After class, everyone headed to the canteen. One took a seat at their usual table. A few of their friends were already there, Jaehyun, Seojun, and a few others. Jungkook soon returned, carrying trays of food for both Wan's and his. "Wan, thank you, baby," she said with a soft smile. "Jungkook, you are welcome," he replied smoothly. Jaehyun groaned. "Jaehyun, can you two stop doing that in front of us? You know very well we are all painfully single." Seojun added with a sigh. "Seojun, seriously, watching you two make me feel even more hopeless about my own life." Jungkook laughed. "Jungkook, then go get yourselves in a relationship. Who is stopping you?" Seojun shot back. "Seojun, if I had someone, do you think I would be sitting here watching your love story unfold? Be quiet." The group laughed together, teasing and chatting as they ate, enjoying the moment like any group of young friends lost in the joy of campus life. Later, more classes followed. The day moved quietly, with everyone buried in assignments, lectures, and the everyday rush of student life. As they came to an end, Wine and Jungkook walked together toward the gate. "Jungkook, tomorrow's the basketball match," he reminded her, glancing sideways. I smiled. "Wine, of course I'll be there." "Jungkook, how else will I win if you are not cheering for me?" he said, half joking, half serious. Wine blushed. "Wine, don't worry, I will cheer louder than any." The air was electric, filled with the roar of an excitement crowd. Voices echoed from every direction, and the stadium pulsed with energy. The match had already begun, and within minutes both teams had scored several goals. It was a thrilling face of two incredibly strong teams battling it out, neither giving the other an inch. Wine and Jaehyun sat together, their eyes glued to the game, cheering passionately for their team. Wine's heart was pounding, her palms sweaty with tension. As the clock ticked down to the final moments, the score was still tied. No one could predict who would win. Then, in the very last second, the ball landed in Jungkook's hand. Time seemed to freeze, and then he scored. The curds erupted. Jungkook's team had won. Everyone jumped in excitement, screaming and hugging one another. One ran to the field, holding a water bottle. Without a word, Jungkook pulled her into his arms, lifting her off the ground and spinning her with pure joy. After a few blissful seconds, he gently set her down. The celebration was far from over. Later that evening, the entire friend group went out to a cozy restaurant to celebrate their glorious win. Laughter echoed through the walls as they feasted, revealing the thrilling moments of the match. Hours passed in joy, but eventually it was time to head home. Night had already fallen. Jungkook cocked up with some work commitments at home, could not accompany Wine, so she decided to walk back by herself. The streets were quiet and calm. Wine walked steadily under the night sky, her mind still lingering on the joyful memories of the day. But then, suddenly her vision blurred, the lights dimmed around her, her head began to spin. And then darkness. She collapsed on the pavement. Within moments, people gathered around, their voices filled with concern and urgency. One of them called for an ambulance. Minutes later, Wayne was rushed to the hospital, unconscious and unaware of what lay ahead. Total darkness. Wayne slowly opened her eyes. Everything was blurry at first, but after a few moments her vision cleared. She tried to move her arms and legs, only to discover they were entangled with wires connected to various machines. The beeping, the sterile scent, the cold metal around. She was clearly in a hospital room. Just then, a nurse walked in and, noticing she was awake, hurried out in alarm. Moments later, a doctor entered the room and gently sat down beside her. "Doctor, how are you feeling now?" "Wine, my head hurt, my whole body itches badly." The doctor hesitated for a moment, his eyes darting toward the nurse. Then he looked back at Wine. "Doctor, do you have any guardians or family? I need to speak with them if possible." Wine quietly. "No, I am alone." The nurse and the doctor exchanged glances again, something unspoken passing between them. Wine noticed. She sensed there was something they didn't want to stay aloud. "Wine, please, just tell me." The doctor took a deep breath. He looked at her with softness, then tried to mask the truth. But the weight of his word broke through. Doctor, you usually don't share this information directly with patients when they are in this condition. But since you have no one else, I have to tell you. He paused, then spoke with grave clarity. Doctor, you have chronic myeloid leukemia. It's a type of blood cancer and there is very little chance of survival. You don't have much time left. Wine froze. It felt like the ceiling collapsed over her chest. Her mind stopped. Her eyes stared at him blankly, like they could not comprehend the meaning of the words. Doctor softly, I know this is hard, but don't give up. If you are willing, we can start you on medication. You will have to visit the hospital regularly for treatment. That's all we can do. I'm sorry. He stood and walked out, leaving the room in an eerie silence. Wine turned her head slowly toward the window. Outside, the world carried on, but inside, everything shattered. One sat silently in her hospital bed for hours, the doctor's words echoing in her mind like thunder. In an empty room, chronic myeloid leukemia, no hope, no time. The walls around her felt colder now, sterile, lifeless. When night fell, Wine decided not to stay. She could not take the suffocating stillness of the hospital any longer. After signing the necessary papers, she slowly made her way out, the soft thuds of her footsteps echoing down the long hallway. The air outside was cool, but her body felt heavy, weak, as if every step was a battle. Her limbs ached, her mind swelled, but she kept moving. Halfway home, her strength gave out. She spotted a public bench nearby and dragged herself toward it, collapsing onto the seat with a sigh that carried more pain than breath. She felt like the whole world was spinning without her. Her phone buzzed in her bag. She knew it was Jungkook, but she could not bring herself to answer, not now. As the ringing stopped, her ears picked up a soft conversation. A couple strolled past the bench, unaware of her presence. Boy, next year we are getting married. We will save up and throw the biggest wedding ever. Girl giggle, you promised me to buy everything I love. Boy, everything. It's been 6 years. You deserve it all. Wine turned her face away, trying to hide the tears gathering in her eyes, but the words pierced her heart. She remembered Jungkook, his dreams, his plans, his laughter whenever they talked about the wedding, the way his eyes lit up when he imagined their future, raising kids, building a home, growing old together. He would break, Wine thought. When she dies, Jungkook would not know how to handle it. He might fall apart, stop taking care of himself. All those dreams would crash with her last breath. She could not let that happen, not to him. Wine knew keeping Jungkook close during her final days would be selfish. Watching her fade away would ruin him, destroy him. He deserved to heal, to love again, to have a full life, even if it wasn't with her, even if it shattered her to let him go. Tears streamed down Wine's face as she buried it in her hands, sobbing silently in the dark. Her eyes burned, sullen and red, but still she made up her mind. She would break up with Jungkook, disappear from his life. He would not know why. But one day he would move on, he would be happy again, maybe not with her, but with someone who could stay, someone who would not vanish like smoke in the wind. Wine whipped her face and slowly stood up. Her body trembled with each step, but her heart was determined. After what felt like forever, she reached her apartment. Everything inside was in chaos, dishes unwashed, books scattered, curtains half closed. It matched the mess inside her. She didn't bother fixing any of it. She just sat on the edge of her bed, then collapsed backward into the mattress. The ceiling stared back at her. That night, Wine didn't sleep. She just thought about love, about letting go, about how some goodbyes are the ultimate act of love. And as dawn crept in, thoughts of window, she knew what she had to do. Several days passed. Wine hadn't spoken to Jungkook. She hadn't returned his calls. She hadn't answered the door when he showed up at her place. She avoided him like a ghost, disappearing into the shadows of her own pain. But today she had made a decision. She needed to end it for good. They had agreed to meet at a quiet little cafe, one they used to visit when things were simpler. One arrived early. She was dressed beautifully, with her makeup perfectly done, hiding every trace of illness from her face. Her eyes, however, still held the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights. Jungkook arrived moments later, and the moment he saw her, he rushed forward and wrapped her in his arms. Jungkook, where have you been? His voice trembled with frustration, fear, and love. I have called you so many times. I even came to your apartment. I was so worried, Wine. I thought something happened to you. Wine gently pulled herself out of his embrace. Her expression was still cold, not a single trace of a smile. Jungkook stepped back, confused. This wasn't the Wine he knew. Something was different. Something was wrong. Jungkook, why aren't you saying anything? He asked, almost whispering. One gestures for him to sit. Why, sit down. I need to talk to you. Her voice was firm, too calm, too controlled. Jungkook obeyed, sensing something serious. She took a deep breath. Why, I got engaged. Jungkook blinked and laughed nervously. Jungkook, why, this isn't the time for jokes. Not after all this. Seriously, what's going on? Fine, I'm not joking. She met his eyes with a blank stare. I am done with this relationship. There is no future in it. I don't want to waste any more of my time or energy. Jungkook stared at her frozen. Jungkook, what? What are you talking about? When you still don't have a job, you have no stability. I don't know when, if ever, you will be able to marry me. I have been thinking about it for a long time. I just didn't tell you. She paused before continuing her words sharp and cold. I met someone else. He's successful, rich. He can give me a life you never could. We got engaged recently. Jacob felt the ground collapse beneath his feet. He wanted to scream, he wanted to believe it was a nightmare. Still in disbelief, he stared at her. One calmly lifted her hand and showed him the ring, a beautiful diamond sparkle on her ring finger. One, see, it's real expensive too. I can even introduce you to him if you want. Jung stared at the ring. It was real. All of it was real. His heart shattered like glass. Jungkook saw everything we had, all of it. It was fake. He whispered, his voice cracking. Wine, yes. Wine said flatly. It was all just a performance. I'm done performing. Jungkook's face fell, his eyes turned red, tears slowly began to roll down his cheeks. Jungkook, didn't you ever feel anything for me, even once? Wine looked away. Wine, no, she lied. So it was all a lie. His voice was barely audible. Wine, how many times do I have to say it? Her tone turned impatient. Yes, everything was a lie. I don't love you. I never did. Please stop contacting me. Jungkook stood up slowly. His shoulders were shaking. He wiped his tear with the back of his hand, struggling to compose himself. Jungkook, I am sorry. He breathed the words out like a final goodbye. I'm sorry for bothering you all this time. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the cafe, disappearing into the evening haze. Wine sat there still. Her face didn't flinch, but her heart, it was screaming. She watched the door close behind him, and in that very moment she broke. Tears poured down her cheeks uncontrollably, blurring her vision, soaking her perfectly applied makeup. She buried her face in her hands and cried like she never had before. Just felt hollow, and she knew she had done the right thing, the painful, necessary, and utterly devastating right thing. Eventually, after what felt like hours, she rose from the chair, wiped her face, and walked back home in silence. The night was still, but her world had never felt louder. It had been months. One could no longer move like she used to. Her body had given up piece by piece, and now she was confined to the hospital bed, frail, pale, and barely holding on. Since that day, Jungkook had vanished from her life. Not a call, not a single word. Her condition was deteriorating rapidly, and the doctors had nearly given up hope. The once bright girl was now a shell of who she used to be. Amidst all the despair, however, a glimmer of light appeared. One last name, one last chance. A nurse walked in, gently placing a warm cloth on Wine's forehead. Nurse, there is a doctor arriving today, she said softly. He just returned from abroad. He is well known, and people say he has performed miracle before. Maybe he can help you. One heard the words. She even smiled faintly, but her eyes didn't leave the windows. She had long stopped believing in miracles. Moments later, a group of doctors entered the room. They examined her silently, flipping through charts and whispering amongst themselves. One remained motionless, her eyes unfocused, her breathing so low. As the others began expressing their reluctance to treat her, one man finally spoke, his voice calm but confident. "I can treat her," he said. All heads turned. "Mr. Kim," another doctor said, "with all due respect, every physician here has declined the case. This is beyond what medicine can do." Mr. Kim stood in ground. "Mr. Kim, I said I can treat her now. If you will excuse me, I need some privacy with my patient." The others exchanged glances before quietly filing out. He was a man in his early 40s, his hair a blend of soft black and aging grey. There was something in his eyes, a silent stroke of pain and resolve. He pulled a chair close and sat beside Wayne. For a few moments he said nothing. And gently he asked, "Mr. Kim, how are you feeling?" Wayne didn't even look at him. "Wayne, you already know the answer to that." He nodded. "Mr. Kim, and the pain?" She finally turned her head slowly to meet his gaze. "Wayne, it never goes away." Mr. Kim sighed. "Mr. Kim, don't worry, we're going to fix this." Wayne chuckled weakly, a dry, hopeless laugh. "Wayne, there is nothing left to fix. My time is almost up." Mr. Kim looked at her, not just looked, saw her, and in that moment something shifted within him. He saw flashes of another girl, his daughter, the one he had lost years ago. The same age, the same fire once burned behind those tired eyes. She could have been her, maybe. That's why he felt drawn to Wayne. Maybe that's why he couldn't walk away like the rest. Sitting there beside this dying girl who had given up, Mr. Kim made a silent promise he would save her no matter what. As he stood to leave, he gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Mr. Kim, you may have given up on yourself, Wayne," he said softly, "but I haven't." And with that, the first thread of hope began to stretch itself back into her broken soul. Jungkook sat in the corner of the university canteen, silent and motionless. His eyes stared blankly at the table in front of him. His friend Seojun and Jaeyeon sat across from him, both equally confused, shocked, and full of unanswered questions. "Seojun, I still can't believe Wayne would do something like this," he said, shaking his head. Jaeyeon nodded. "Jaeyeon, I can't believe you even tried to look for her after all that." Jungkook didn't respond immediately. After a pause, he finally said in a low voice, "Jungkook, I did. I tried many times after that day. She used to live at that old house, but the landlord said she doesn't live there anymore. Said she now lives with her husband." Seojun frowned. "Seojun, but why never seemed like someone who would lie? None of this makes sense." Jaeyeon sighed. "Jaeyeon, she cut us off completely. I called her so many times, but her numbers changed. It's like she just vanished." "Seojun, she probably dropped out of university too," he added. "She hasn't come for any exams. Finals are already done. We're only coming now for the practicals. She didn't show up at all." Jaeyeon nodded slowly. "Jaeyeon, we didn't even see her around campus during the exams." Jungkook clenched his jaw. "Jungkook, can you stop talking about this? I'm not feeling well." There were dark circles under his eyes, and his face had grown pale. Without another word, Jungkook stood up, grabbed his bag, and left the canteen. Nothing felt right anymore. He wandered through the city aimlessly until he arrived at a quiet park. He sat down on an empty bench, letting the silence swallow him. Minutes passed. Then he saw a black car roll up and stop near the park entrance. A man stepped out and walked around to the other side to open the door. He helped a young woman step out. She wore a delicate, elegant dress, and her movement was soft, almost fragile. Jungkook's heart nearly stopped. It was Wayne. He stood up instinctively, ready to run to her, but the moment his eyes dropped to her hand, he froze in place. The man was holding Wayne's hand. Jungkook watched helpless as the man brought a bunch of colorful balloons and handed them to her. She smiled faintly, a rare glimpse of joy on her face. They started walking slowly through the park side by side. One held the balloons in one hand and the man's hand in the other. Jungkook's heart shattered. Now it all made sense. The landlord, the silence, the phone number that no longer worked. Maybe she really did move on. He turned away, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. He didn't try to weep them. With heavy steps and a heavier heart, he walked away from the park and headed home alone. Across the park, Mr. Kim had brought wine out of the breath of fresh air. She hadn't left the hospital in weeks. Her treatment was ongoing, but her spirit was slowly healing too. He bought her some balloons, hoping to bring even a small smile to her face, and it worked. And it feels strange to be outside again, she said softly. Everything looks so peaceful. Mr. Kim smiled. Mr. Kim, the weather is beautiful today. They walked a little more before dark clouds began to gather overhead. The scent of approaching rain hung in the air. Mr. Kim, I think it's going to rain soon, he said gently. We should get you back to the hospital. Why nodded. Fine, okay. Mr. Kim carefully helped her back into the car, holding her steady as she stepped in. She still hasn't strong enough to move alone. As it drove away, the balloons bounced lightly in Wine's lap, and the first drop of rain began to fall, marking the end of one moment and perhaps the beginning of another. Years had passed. Wine had spent all those years in the hospital. The sterile white walls had seen her deepest pain and rarest moment of hope. Her life began entangled within that place, memories stitched between IV drips, whispered prayers, and sleepless nights. In the beginning, no one believed she could recover. Her body was broken, her spirit barely holding on. But one man never gave up. Mr. Kim, he fought for her when she could not fight for herself. With relentless effort and unshaken faith, he brought Wine back from the edge, and today she was finally being discharged. Wine, Mr. Kim, she said, turning to him. You said I would be discharged today. Mr. Kim, of course you are. He smiled warmly. But from now on, you will be staying with me at my house. My wife and son are waiting for you. Wine shook her head gently. Wine, I have told you before, I don't want to be a burden to anyone. Mr. Kim, you are not a burden, he said firmly. You are like a daughter to me. My wife is overjoyed that you are finally coming home. You are not an outsider, Ryan. You are family. How many times do I have to ask you to call me dad? He looked at her with so much hope that one could not bring herself to disappoint him again. This man had stayed by her side through everything when no one else did. She smiled softly. Why, all right, Dad. Mr. Kim's eyes welled up with emotion, a proud smile spreading across his face. Mr. Kim, then let's go home, he said when hesitated. Why, I need to meet someone first. I will come home tonight. Mr. Kim, can't it wait? He asked gently. Why, no, it has to be today. It's important. Mr. Kim studied her face for a moment before nodding. Mr. Kim, all right, just promise me you will come home soon. Why, I will. Wine walked out of the hospital gates for the first time in years. The world felt different, louder, faster, overwhelming, but her heart wasn't focused on any of that. Today she would see him, Jungkook. Her heart pounded just thinking about it. What would he say when he saw her? What would he feel? Anger, shock, relief? She didn't know. All she knew was that after all these years she had found him, found out where he lived, and now she was finally going to see him again. The future was uncertain, fear, joy, hope, everything blended together inside her, but she kept walking to whatever waited on the other side. Wai stood silently in front of the grand gate of Jungkook's house. Her fingers hovered over the doorbell, but just before she could press it, a familiar voice reached her ears from inside the house. Come on, honey, we're running late. Wai's breath caught in her throat. That voice, it's him. She instinctively stepped back and hid behind the tall pillars beside the entrance. The front door creaked open and she peered from the shadows. Jungkook stepped outside holding a little girl in his arms. The child was beautiful, her wide eyes, her curly dark hair. She looked just like him. Before Wine could process the shock, a young woman hurriedly stepped out of the house. I'm ready now, the woman said breathlessly. Jungkook sighed, annoyed. Jungkook, you always take forever to get ready. The woman laughed playfully. Oh, stop complaining. From Jungkook's arm, the little girl chimed in with an innocent grin. Apple's right, you always take too long. The woman turned to the girl with mock irritation. Excuse me, young lady, who do you think got you dressed this morning? I only got ready after helping you. That's why I am late. She got into the car, slightly annoyed. Jungkook smiled and looked at the moments later, the engine roared and the car drove away, a picture of a perfect little family. Wine stood frozen. Her Her eyes burned, but no tears fell. The weight in her chest made it hard to breathe. She had come here with hope, with 1,000 questions and maybe a dream, a foolish dream that maybe Jungkook still remembered, still waited, still loved her, but all of that shattered in a second. He had moved on, he had a family, he was happy. One whispered under her breath, her voice breaking once, so he really did move on. She looked up at the sky, searching for answers in the clouds. A long sigh escaped her lips, and then she walked away. No hesitation, no thoughts, just numbness. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She answered it without looking. A grave voice from the other side said, "Miss Wyan, I'm sorry, Mr. Kim and his wife, they didn't survive the car accident." Her heart stopped. "Wyan, what?" she gasped. The world spun around her, her legs gave way for a moment, and her mind went blank. But without thinking, she turned around and ran. She had to reach the hospital. She had already lost Jungkook. She could not bear to lose anyone else. One rushed to the hospital, her heart pounding like a drum. As she arrived, the cold, sterile air hit her like a wall. Nothing could prepare her for what she saw next. There they were, Mr. Kim and his wife, laying still, lifeless. Their bodies were badly injured from the brutal accident, their face barely recognizable. All the kindness, all the warmth they once carried had vanished into silence. One stood frozen, tears streaming down her cheeks. It felt like the world had stopped. Then a soft cry broke the silence. In a corner of the room, a little boy sat curled up, sobbing into his tiny hands. He looked no older than 5 or 6. His small frame trembled as he cried for the only two people he had ever truly known, his parents. One heart shattered. This child had no one left, no family, no safety, no arms to run into. After the funeral was over and the last shovel of earth covered the graves, one knew what she had to do. Perhaps this was fate. Perhaps this was her way of paying back the kindness Mr. Kim had shown her when no one else had. She took the boy to a children's home, but her heart would not let her walk away. Days passed, but her thoughts remained with him. The loneliness in his eyes mirrored her own, and then she made a decision. She adopted that boy. From that moment on, he became her entire world. One didn't just provide shelter, she gave him a mother's love, protection, and a future. She fed him, bathed him, read to him at night, and kissed his forehead before bed. Every tear he shed, she wept. Every fear he had, she silenced with a warm hug. Life had taken so much from her, but in this little boy it had also given something back, something pure and worth fighting for. Maybe this was her story, maybe this was always how it was meant to be written. She didn't know what tomorrow held, but one thing she knew for sure: she would not raise this child with all the love in her heart, not out of obligation, but out of something deeper, a silent promise, a debt repaid, not with money, but with love. Present. One finished telling her story, her voice calm, her face glowing with a gentle smile, as though she had just traveled back through the page of her life and returned with peace in her heart. When she looked at Jia, she was surprised to find tears streaming down her face. One chuckled softly. When, "Hey, why are you crying now?" Jia wiped her tears but failed to hold back the emotion. "Jia, I could not help it, that story. I don't know how anyone could listen without crying." She began sobbing more openly, her chest heaving with every breath. One leaned forward, placing a comfort hand on her shoulder. "Wine, it's all in the past now," she said with a soft smile. "There is no need to cry over something that life has already healed." Jia took a deep breath and, after a moment, managed to compose herself. "Jia, so where is that little boy now?" she asked, her voice still shaking slightly. One's eyes lit up. "Why, he is all grown up now, waiting for me at the airport actually," she said with pride. "Funny thing is, he doesn't see me as a sister anymore. He calls me Mom." Her word glowed with affection, and there was a shimmer in her eyes. Gianna, smiling through her tears, felt a quiet joy in seeing one so full of life. A few moments later, the announcement came through the intercom. The plane had landed. Passengers began gathering their bags and making their way to the exit. "Gia, well," she said, standing up, "I guess this is goodbye for now." One nodded warmly. "One, take care, dear." As they existed, one spotted him, her son. He stood there at the terminal, eyes scanning the crowd. The moment he saw her, he ran straight into her arms, wrapping himself around her tightly. "Why, Jay," she whispered, hugging him back with all her heart. "Jay, it's been too long," he said. One laughed. "One, it's only been a week. You have been calling me like crazy every day. Jay, you know how I worry about you," he replied with a grin. As they chatted, one eye drifted away for a moment, only to witness something unexpected. Jia was running toward two people standing nearby, a kind-looking middle-aged man and woman. One's heart paused as recognition dawned. It was Jungkook and his wife. So that's who Jia was, their daughter. From a distance, one watched them reunite. She didn't say a word, just stood there, smiling faintly, grateful they had found happiness. A strange silence wrapped around her until Jay's voice called her back to the present. "Jay, hey mom," he said, waving a hand in front of her. "I have been talking to you. Where did your mind wander off to?" One blinked and laughed. "Why, now here, let's go home." And with that, they left the airport behind. Epilogue. In life, many people enter our story. Some stay, some drift away. Some were never meant to walk beside us for the whole journey, and that's okay. Not every love ends in forever, and not every goodbye comes with closure. But in the mix of joy and sorrow, of loss and healing, there are moments, tiny, powerful moments, that reminded us how to live. We won't survive by holding on to pain. We survive by choosing to live in the light that remains. And in that light, one walk forward, strong, graceful, and whole once more.